Chapter 533. This mountain of bones isn't that strong to begin with. However, Jin Tong fought a great battle up there. His electrode golden body. I just randomly came up with this name. But his ability to use his metallized body to guide powerful electromagnetic fields is quite decent. It's precisely because of the ionization and electrolysis effects of high-voltage electricity that a large amount of bones were crushed and then glued back together. It's tantamount to refining and remodeling. What was originally a pile of broken bones has gone up in strength, and most of them have fused together. They won't break so easily. I can take them back and use them as souvenirs. I can sell them for 1,000,000 or 800,000. A white-haired old man was laughing and laughing as he analyzed the ruins left behind after the great battle in the seas outside Xiao City on the inner world's famous professional review program, Physiognomy. That's right. Half of the credit for creating this mountain of bones belongs to Jin Tong. But the structure of the mountain's terrain and laws should have nothing to do with him. He doesn't have this artistic sense. Plus, I feel that I should have seen a similar design a long time ago. That's right. That's right. It possesses the elements of the inner world. It has appeared before, but there hasn't been any trace of it for a long time. I've almost forgotten about it. Besides, you shouldn't be asking me this question. The gorgeous host's exaggerated expression of astonishment could be translated as, Motherf ****. Did we find a scammer to cheat us out of our appearance fees? Of course, this was just a misconception caused by the host's lack of skill. In reality, when the program Physiognomy spent a lot of money to invite this white-haired old man, the veteran extraordinary ghost Che, to participate in the program, the inner world's viewership ratings reached a terrifying 77% during last night's primetime slot. This kind of data meant that, aside from a portion of people who wandered the wilderness and didn't have the ability to watch, practically 99% of the inner world's members were watching and studying this program. Luo Nan, who had been diligently preparing for his lessons last night, became the 1% who didn't fit in with the group. So much so that when he ran this morning, he had to make up for his lessons and watch the broadcast. This white-haired old man with a gloomy name was famous in the inner world for being a disrespectful old man. He once used his X-ray vision ability to wreak havoc for a time, making countless enemies. But he was still able to live safely and steadily until now. From this, one could see how powerful his abilities were. At this moment, Che was smiling so widely that his eyes had turned into slits. This was most likely because of the beautiful MC he was partnered with. Only God knew what he saw in his eyes. Don't look at me with that kind of gaze. Don't you think it's more fun to dig deep into your body and mind than to look at this mountain of bones? You're taking advantage of me again. The beautiful MC cursed under her breath as she put on a curious expression. You mean, here, give me the controller. Yes, let's focus on it. The first-hand video from Zhang Ji's live stream was fast-forwarded under Che Yi's control. When it reached the latter half, he pressed pause. Let's not talk about whether Zhang Ji's close-up was based on her looks. Don't you think that this young man, who originally had the same demeanor as me in the past, now looks a little out of character? The director took the opportunity to give a close-up so that all the ability users who were watching the show could clearly see Tian Bang, who was standing on top of White Bone Mountain at that time, with a focused and cold expression. Afterwards, the show was reduced to Che Yi's old talk show. There was no longer any meaning in watching it. Luo Nan closed the video and let out a long breath of turbid air. The thought in his mind was, someone finally found out. Thanks to Major General Tian's godly assistance. Only now did the stimulation of the external sound waves to his auditory central nervous system arrive late. There was a process of deceleration and acceleration, so much so that Chinikuan's speech seemed particularly slow in the beginning. Then he suddenly accelerated in the middle, appearing to be several times faster than before. Even though there were all sorts of discomfort, Luo Nan was still able to obtain a gap to divert his attention. He was able to successfully receive external information that he should have naturally ignored. This was one of the applications of the organization technique. According to Dean Wan Ta's explanation, this was to actively exert influence on the external material waves. This caused the concurrent information flows to form a sequence of tasks that could be fully received and processed. In other words, it was to force the order of the external world to act according to the order and rules of the caster. This was to coordinate with the normal serial work of the human mind. From Luo Nan's perspective, the so-called influencing the material waves could be completely replaced with the mutual interference between the mental and material planes. But this didn't affect his understanding and practice of this principle. Right now, this was just a very basic application. At present, he could only process 2 audio-visual information sources at the same time at most, not to mention the obvious deformation caused by interfering with the information. He had to wait until he cultivated interference, sequencing, storage, release, processing, and execution to be completely natural, without the slightest trace of human interference. Only then could he be considered to have truly entered the next level. Luo Nan still had a great deal of practice to do in order to reach that step. So he didn't waste a bit of time. He absolutely wouldn't miss out on any occasions where he could use this technique. Perhaps it was the heaven's reward for his hard work, but the few sources of information he received this morning all told him good news. Chi Nikuan said, Senior Che has basically been making a fuss around White Bone Mountain. He has kept his mouth shut about Jin Tong's life and death, as well as the relevant battle deductions. And even though he's doing a program in the outer seas of Xia City, he's only messing around on the cruise ship. He has no intention of entering the country. His attitude has been relatively neutral so far. Is this considered good news? If he can maintain this attitude and leave immediately after the program ends, he can set an example and lead effect for many people. This is indeed good news. From the current situation, the restless situation caused by the 2016 billion in Xia City had actually been suppressed. Perhaps it was because hundreds of corpses had been strewn across number 9 and number 10 of Xia City in a single day and night. Perhaps it was because Jin Tong's life and death were unknown. Perhaps it was because the dark hand that colluded with the government, the military, and the merchant had been ruthlessly slapped. And Luo Nan wouldn't overlook the crucial role played by the Xia City branch in this matter. Half an hour ago, the Finance Committee controlled by Her Majesty Empress Wu had sent over the Bill of Honor points he had consumed yesterday. Compared to the impactful numbers in last week's general ledger, the daily accounts appeared dull and trivial. But the ledger that was pieced together bit by bit told him in the most direct way what kind of work the entire system of the Xia City branch had done in order to maintain this situation. And what kind of expenditure would it be if converted to the wealth of the secular world? But then again, Her Majesty Empress Wu didn't issue the bill to slap him in the face or make a fool of him. It wasn't to make him remember, reflect, or feel guilty. The practical significance lay in the fact that he had to take several dozen factors that appeared on the bill into consideration when formulating a battle plan. If he didn't do this, he would never be able to be considered comprehensive. He would always need others to wipe his ass from behind. It was absolutely not an easy task to take all the elements into consideration. Under normal circumstances, he needed an enormous staff. But the problem was that some extremely private personal elements could not be made public to the public. This was true even for Her Majesty Empress Wu and President Ouyang. Luo Nan, who was in the novice stage, needed to keep many more trump cards hidden. How to reconcile the relationship between thoroughness and secrecy was a problem that Luo Nan had to deal with. Her Majesty Empress Wu's requirement of being a match for 10,000 people corresponded with this. Luo Nan needed to frame the outline of a train of thought early on, and it couldn't be too small. He needed to have a clear goal, a broad layout, and even more, he needed to have a core method. When this backbone was determined, Her Majesty Empress Wu's bill could play an enormous role. He could use this to sort out clues, fill in loopholes, and stimulate inspiration. Right now, Luo Nan really did have an outline in his mind. He just needed to build a framework. He had already experienced success more than once. It was just that this time, the scope was much broader. Basically, as long as the soul cloak covered the area, as long as the wraith sign and the other believers were effective, it was all within his attack and defense range. Yes, there were also the resources of the Xia City branch. He would never forget Her Majesty Empress Wu's warning. He even drew inferences from one example. Not only did he need to see the resources, he also needed to see the opposite of the resources. His battlefield was far vaster than he originally estimated. It was far more complex. But what was very miraculous was that as Luo Nan gained a deeper understanding of the situation, he unexpectedly discovered that his operating space within it was constantly growing. It was like the network of red dots on the three-dimensional map of Xia City this morning. It was an angle that he had never thought of before, but it was unexpectedly easy to get his hands on. As the incorporeal net woven by the wraith sign continued to expand, the main thread of his actions erased the fog and color blocks at every moment, revealing his true appearance. This caused Luo Nan himself to be very shocked. Remember, this is just an illusion floating in my mind. Luo Nan reminded himself that all of these things couldn't be replaced by his fantasies and designs while running. He needed more preparation, more real experiments, and at the same time, he needed to be equipped with enough adaptability and hard power to make up for his flaws. Fortunately, he had already considered all of these factors in his earliest crude designs and had made certain arrangements. He saw the uncouth ghost eye make all sorts of conjectures about the Hill of Bones, and he felt that it was about time. But at this time, the virtual brain app became an X factor. It was still the same question. Would this sudden scan and analysis give him an additional trump card? Or would it make matters even more chaotic? After Luo Nan made his choice, this became the domain of the god of fate. Perhaps he could even pray to the moral integrity of a certain gene provider. Luo Nan stopped walking. An hour of running was nothing more than an insignificant warm-up, but his brain was operating at an ultra-high intensity, carrying out the rumbling operation of a deathly cross-country run. He even felt a bit dizzy when he came to a stop outside the community. This was a sign that he had consumed too much mental energy. It was just as Dean Wanta had said. The overall planning technique was never a technique that saved effort. It just allowed the brain to consume energy at the same time as it became more efficient. Chi Nikuan, who was running with him, gave him a thumbs up, turned around, and left. Luo Nan subconsciously paid attention to the virtual brain's interface, looking at the analysis progress of each new element. Then he saw, Jin Tong's soul light seed was still far ahead, and it simply looked like a bug had appeared. Analysis progress, 37%. The other three items added together were far from enough to make up for it. What was going on? Could it be that Jin Tong's specter was going to jump out after breakfast to take his life for revenge? I heard that the entire design and decoration was done bit by Director Wan and the children. It's simple and warm. It's really pleasing to the eye and has a lot of style. Then did you know that your sudden arrival caused chaos in the orphanage and also forced Rui Wen to cross a distance of 60 kilometers to flash back and act cute? Luo Nan buried his head in his kanji, cursing endlessly in his mind. Also, he actually thought that Rui Wen was very cute. Was this a sign that they were fated? In addition to praising Rui Wen and the environment of the orphanage, Mo Ye also had a good impression of Dean Wan Ta. That Dean Wan is also quite charming. He is a very dedicated and warm man. I heard that he used to be a traveler, but after he gained some enlightenment in the wilderness, he came back to do charity. He's a very down-to-earth person. Is that so? Sounds good. Although Mrs. Luo Shuqing always had a lot of opinions about Mo Ye's sloppiness, she also attached great importance to Mo Ye's insight and evaluation. She viewed them as an important reference. From this point of view, perhaps her aunt firmly believed that her eldest daughter was the one who truly inherited her innate bloodline. According to Moya's words, she slightly revised her train of thought. How about we bring Ruiwen out for a meal today? The whole family will go and find a nearby restaurant. 2 people will go to the orphanage and bring Ruiwen out. I'm afraid that too many people will disturb the other children. Luonan felt admiration in his heart. Empress Dowager, you've really thought things through thoroughly. However, Mrs. Luo Shuqing proved that she had thought things through more than he imagined in the next moment. Oh right. I'm going to contact worker Zhai. Ha. The child he's sponsoring is called Diweiwu. He's with Ruiwen. There's no harm in inviting them over. With these children together, it's the same as having a small party. It's not too restrictive. Unfortunately, time is too tight. Otherwise, the effect would be better at home. Luonan blinked his eyes. You really are thinking too much. Mo Peng had just defeated the Sandman, so he came to his senses now. He appeared very surprised. You're saying that I'm going to this party? You're voluntarily withdrawing from this family group? Of course not. I'm saying that the low-altitude public transport is too slow. I won't be able to make it in time for dinner. Who's going to pick me up after school? Mo Haihang spoke calmly from the main seat. Let your mom make a detour. As compensation, I'll send Luonan off today. This kind of fairness is really shameful. Mo Peng was like a dog in grief and indignation, but he could only swallow the bone his parents threw at him. Luonan turned his gaze in slight astonishment. Mo Haihang lowered his head to look at the flashing news information on his desk once more. It was as if those words just now were the most simple and last-minute decision. 15 minutes later, Luonan sat in his uncle's family SUV. At the same time, he mentally prepared himself to face the interrogation once more. With this mentality, the gaze he cast at the driver's seat was actually quite bitter. You didn't do any proper work in class yesterday, did you? Looking up information and data wasn't a big deal. Finding false information wasn't a problem either. But that was all bought with points. Luonan really felt tired from dealing with such a scheming elder. But unexpectedly, his uncle continued the topic of Ruiwen on the road. He probed more into Ruiwen's temperament, mental state, and other elements. These were the things Luonan had been mulling over all this time. It was inevitable that he would say a few more words. He would discuss how to better integrate Ruiwen into the world of normal people. With that, he could not help but relax. He took the opportunity to use his half-baked strategic planning technique to simulate a parallel mission. Aside from the conversation, he could also look at the virtual brain app. Though Jin Tong didn't have any more vengeful souls after breakfast, its soul light seeds analysis progress was still at the forefront. It had already broken through the 60% threshold. There really was nothing that could stop it from advancing like a hurricane. Luonan felt a bit uneasy about this kind of bug-level analysis progress, but he was looking forward to it even more. Perhaps after this analysis was completed, he would be able to have a more intuitive understanding of the core of the virtual brain app. Looking at the interface of the app too much really made him irritated. His thoughts swept across the starry sky interface, and he would make new discoveries from time to time. He was certain that there were many functions hidden within this interactive interface. But correspondingly, there would be undecipherable characters. Even though they all belonged to the same hieroglyphic system, even though many of them looked familiar, Luonan was unable to decipher them no matter how hard he tried. Interaction was impossible, and the functions were limited. Luonan couldn't operate a single one of them. So it was said that characters were the natural moat. The obstruction of characters was the division between civilizations. Luonan couldn't help but think. Could it be that an inconceivable civilization truly existed behind the external neuron? Like aliens? Perhaps those undecipherable hieroglyphic characters were the carriers of an alien civilization? Similar thoughts had appeared more than once, but it was hard to form a conclusion. Luo Nan nearly believed that the road to school was going to pass amidst family conversations and meaningless fantasies. Then he suddenly heard a sentence, "Your search index is very high right now." Ha! Luo Nan's head went numb the instant his uncle's words entered his ears. He immediately raised the priority of the conversation mission to the highest level, but it was of no use. "What are you talking about?" Mo Haihang switched topics with ease, and he struck right at the pit of Luo Nan's stomach. "Yesterday, I asked a friend at headquarters to do a rough understanding. I can't calculate the specific details, and we don't have that much authority. But if we just consider the search volume and relevance of information related to you from the inner world for the past 2 months, your ranking is quite high. I'm talking about excluding the local information of Xia City. We only calculate the feedback from other regions to Xia City, including Quantum Corporation and some other sensitive enterprises. Of all the SCA members in the Xia City branch, your search index is ranked second. You are second only to a powerful person nicknamed Her Majesty Empress Wu. But starting from last Saturday, the relevant data suddenly fell below the average line. A statistical difference has appeared. Is it because the urgent situation has attracted everyone's attention? Or is there some other factor interfering?" Luo Nan was able to maintain a normal expression right now. This was the limit of what he could do. But what was the point? Mo Haihang turned his gaze to meet Luo Nan's gaze. "I feel like you're doing quite well over there. Are you a celebrity member?" "All right," Luo Nan admitted that his brain was muddled. His planning technique was directly broken. He went in a few circles before he had a rough idea of what was going on. It couldn't be said that the Xia City branch's intelligence work wasn't diligent. If his uncle only understood from the local area of Xia City and went to a separate organization to understand, there would certainly be no flaws. But this old man just bypassed all of this. He set his hand on the flow of information and made deductions. This really couldn't be covered up. The only way was to completely erase all the incoming and outgoing information. But how was that possible? Could Xia City be erased? What about the entire inner world? The inner world could be erased, but what about Quantum Corporation? Luo Nan's thoughts were too naive. Could he get a refund now? His uncle didn't have any intentions of continuing to pursue the matter. Instead, he was laughing. He was really laughing, without any other emotions mixed in. "You people of the Luo family are all like this. It's like you can gather the gazes of others no matter where you go. From the wilderness to the city, you're all like this. It's just that Shu Qing is a bit more low-key." Luo Nan mumbled, unable to speak. "We should celebrate. You're able to continue the path of your grandfather and your parents. I've always admired them. I once wanted to participate, but in the end, I wasn't able to enter the door. At most, I was at the level of an archivist. So, there are times when I'm jealous. There will always be a chasm between normal people and abnormal people. I can only comfort myself by saying that it's the distance between a genius and a madman." Mo Haihang knocked on the control panel as he spoke. The virtual screen lit up, displaying a traditional 2D photo. "Let me show you something new. The 2 madmen of your Luo family." Chapter 535. There were 2 people in the photo. Luo Nan was familiar with them, but he also felt that they were strangers. They both wore white lab coats as they stood on the cracked and warped red earth. The one on the left was an old man with gray hair. Although he was much healthier than he was now, Luo Yuandao could still see that this was his grandfather. There was also a young man who was a bit handsome. His appearance was vaguely similar to the old man. Luo Nan's facial outline could be found in the photo. This was undoubtedly Luo Nan's father, Luo Zhongheng. Both of them had unkempt beards. Their hair had probably not been taken care of for some time. It was messily scattered across their foreheads. Both of them had taut faces and looked serious. However, the scene they displayed was worthy of a round of laughter from the bystanders. The two of them had serious faces, but they posed like a comical comic book pose. Their bodies were half to the side, one to the left and one to the right. They swung their arms and kicked their legs. Their forelimbs were bent and their heads and necks were in an upright and unafraid pose. It was like the most tragic scene of Swan Lake. Luo Nan really did laugh. Perhaps this was the first time in many years that he had seen someone reveal a smile. It was really hard to imagine what kind of situation this was taken under. Look, it's a weird photo of your grandfather and father. Supposedly, the person who took the photo is your mother. You've never seen it before, right? Do you want it? Cough, I don't. That good-for-nothing dad of yours once told me that if you really get involved in this field, no matter how well or badly you develop, you can feel their feelings at the time. You can see happiness in the midst of confusion. You can see difficulties in the midst of success. However, I usually cut it in the middle and make 100 copies of the one on the right. I'll throw darts and play. You can try it. Okay. The rest of the journey was very short. The two didn't talk too much. Luo Nan received the digital photo. The pixels were fine. There were no problems placing it on the flexible e-ink screen or using the external neuron to browse with his consciousness. Luo Nan hadn't considered how to design the darts yet. He just looked at the photo over and over again in a short amount of time. He looked at the image of the fellow. It seemed that the person wasn't just a gloomy and mysterious person that made people loathe. The flat photo gave the figure an extra side profile, making it more distinct. The SUV drove to the school gate like this. But Luo Nan only woke up from a dream when Mo Haihang shouted. He raised his head. Mo Haihang knocked on the steering wheel. It's time. It won't be too late to look later. Don't be late. Luo Nan's reaction was like a thief who had been caught in the act. He closed his notebook with a bang, and the speed of his actions had already exceeded the normal range. However, he also knew that his reaction was too much, so he subconsciously covered it up. Uncle, do you still have similar photos or something? Hide. For example, my mother's photo. I've only seen a few photos of her since I was young. Most recently, I discovered. Luo Nan paused and swallowed the words tree whole back into his stomach. But this question was indeed what he wanted to ask. After hearing the identity of the photographer, he even hoped that the angle of the photo would move forward and include the scene outside the lens. Mo Haihang was taken aback for a moment before he broke into laughter. You've asked this question more than once. Ha! Luo Nan really didn't have much of an impression. When he was very young, around 6 or 7 years old. At that time, you probably just understood what life was and what death was. You cried and threw a tantrum, wanting to find your mother's photo. But in the end, you couldn't find it. Later on, you gradually stopped mentioning it. So you've forgotten. Mo Haihang was a bit surprised, but then he shook his head. There used to be a lot of photos, but there really weren't any at home. Before that bastard of a father of yours left home, he took away all of their photos, including the recorded videos. There were only a few single photos left. I heard that Qingwen didn't really like to be photographed. The majority of the photos he left behind were of him and your father. Luo Nan never thought that he would inadvertently hear this kind of information. He was a bit stupefied for a time. But a sudden quivering jolted him out of his bewildered and warm state in just half a second. 2 seconds later, the security team that had been following them all this time sent out a warning. Suspected sniper. 2:00. Distance 2,700. Altitude 104. This was a simple warning only for Luo Nan. The corresponding tactical coordinates were transmitted to the members of the team through other channels. Luo Nan didn't need this warning. He just received a reminder: there was still an immeasurable distance between him and an ordinary, simple, and regretful life. And there was a tendency for the distance to gradually grow. Such reality made him feel helpless and resentful. But he couldn't show it on his face. He could only brew it in his heart. Luo Nan took a deep breath. Then he revealed a smile to his uncle. I remember now. So I need to go through it properly when I get home, right? Then, I'll see you tonight. He prepared to open the door and get out of the car as he spoke. Mo Hai Heng reminded him from within the car. Don't forget about the dinner tonight. Also, bring an umbrella when it rains. Oh. Luo Nan didn't mind being drenched by the freezing rain he had personally created, but he still obediently picked up the portable umbrella he had prepared. Soon the umbrella unfurled. Chapter 536. Someone immediately came to a realization: you want the blood flame order to take the blame. Logically speaking, it's completely plausible. They're anxious to regroup and make up for their losses in Xia City. They also want to borrow their previous connections to get closer to the water pavilion. Look, this is normal, right? But Mo Luan is already dead. What will they use to fight against two extraordinaries? Relying on the Black Widow's seduction. Isn't that a bit too old? After a burst of strange laughter, he added a suggestion: we can arrange a sufficient number of collaborators for them. This will take some time to pick and choose, but we don't need a century of lies. And there's one more point. It's more important than logic. There's more. It's the time node. Look, the Blood Flame Order's founding celebration is on December 21st. It's less than 10 days from now. The base of believers in the headquarters of Xia City has been attacked, and the elders have died. If they don't do anything, then they might have to experience the most miserable holy day of the establishment of the religion since the split of the order. Perhaps that would be the moment of complete collapse. You all know that when it comes to worship and faith, that's the best reason. Bang bang bang. The sound of knocking on the table rang out. A group of eyes slapped the table and cried out in praise, Motherf *Ker. Now that you mention it, I feel like the Blood Flame Order wouldn't stir up trouble. It's simply illogical. Soon, this group of high-level observers perfected their brilliant ideas into a plan. It was the result of their observation today, sealed, stored, and sent. After the small excitement passed, everyone returned to a state of boredom. After all, there weren't just one or two similar ideas and plans in these 2 days. It wasn't just 8 or 10 either. It was dozens or hundreds. A person in charge of organizing sighed, all of them have designs on the protectors. Aunts, uncles, older sisters, older brothers, and even aunts and aunts. It looks like a plate of sweet and sour, tasty, soft persimmons. The cabin rumbled with laughter. This group of eyes had the most right to speak on this topic. He was the first to express his stance, but he's not an extraordinary. Youngsters will always do foolish things due to impulsiveness. The Xia City branch may seem powerful, but they've already sunk into the gutter. They let a child affect their plans. Even if the child's future is bright, talent doesn't equal intelligence. I heard that the kid still doesn't agree to the safe house plan. He wants to maintain his original pace of life. Then life will teach him how to be a man. The offense is easy and delightful, and the defense is battered and exhausted. Even if it doesn't produce any direct results, it's still good to consume some of Xia City's resources. Wasn't there news that the voices of dissent within the Xia City branch were quite loud? If we can cook the frog in warm water and create conflict between them, or even turn them into enemies, it will save us a lot of trouble. In such a favorable situation, someone raised an objection. But this will slow down the pace. Very quickly, the objection was rebutted: slowing down the pace is more advantageous for us. Xiao City is just a mere branch. Even if they have 2 extraordinaries and a bunch of unreliable allies, they will grind them to death sooner or later if they really wanted to go against the entire world. This was almost everyone's consensus, and it was politically correct. It was unknown which idiot broke a piece of paper. The problem is that the alliance outside might not be reliable. There was a sudden silence in the cabin, not even the sound of breathing could be heard. Fortunately, there was someone who laughed in time. I originally thought it would be a short trip. If we really were to float in the freezing rain for 10 days to half a month, my d*ck would shrink a little. When I go back to shore and find some fun, that would be a real misery. The group of observers roared with laughter. The idiot who just made a slip of the tongue laughed especially loudly. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to dispel the awkwardness between everyone. There was also someone who continued with a senseless joke: be content. The cabin is clearly so hot it's like a bird's nest puddles. Ha! The person who spoke wanted to ask, who raised the temperature so high, but then he saw a human silhouette appear on the cabin wall directly in front of him. It was like a strange relief sculpture that suddenly appeared before his eyes. Moreover, this relief sculpture was alive. In the blink of an eye, it stepped inside. It was as if the metallic wall was nothing but a laughable illusion. The temperature within the cabin rose by a large margin. It rose by more than 20 to 30 degrees in an instant. Everyone felt a scorching heat wave assault their faces. It didn't matter if it was an illusion or not, such a scene couldn't possibly be a joke. Enemy attack. At least half of the people in the cabin jumped up. Although they were observers sitting in the office, they were all above average ability users. At a time like this, the equipment all over the cabin was useless. They had to rely on themselves. Some people fell under the table at the first moment to hide, and through their own channels, they sent out warnings and distress messages. There were also full-time combat and security personnel on the ship, but until now, they hadn't done a good job of security. No matter who was in the cabin, there was an unsolvable doubt in their hearts. Who was the attacker? How did he board the ship? After a short half a second, all doubts became meaningless. The first person to discover it, and also the person who jumped the earliest, suddenly withered. His facial features and 7 orifices spurted out blood-red flames, and his exposed skin wrinkled, as if all the water had been sucked out in an instant, and without a doubt, all the vitality had been sucked out. Blood flames. Amidst the scream, another person was hit by the blood flames and fell to the ground with a scream. Outside the cabin, the footsteps and shouts of the security personnel were already concentrated. Even before the footsteps, the cabin door rumbled. The strongest person on the ship, the B-class expert Su Hu, had already broken through the door, wanting to catch the attacker unprepared. However, at this time, the attacker's human figure once again turned into nothingness. His originally substantial body turned into a strange smoke that surged like fog, and countless sparks burst out from it. All the people in the cabin were hit by the rain and dew, and no one could avoid it. Suffocating fog, shattering fire. F***ck me. Su Hu couldn't help but curse. At the same time, he dashed out of the cabin door at an even faster speed, knocking into the security personnel behind him and sending them flying. He was actually saving someone. Almost at the instant he retreated, the cabin exploded with a rumble. Flames with a bewitching and thick blood color chased after his figure, spurting out from the cabin door and forming a ferocious flame tongue. The impact even blasted through the corridor, the cabin walls, and a small part of the ship's hull, flickering in the freezing rain on the sea surface. The security personnel at the door were swaying left and right. In the end, only 2 or 3 unlucky people were burned to charcoal. This was already the best result. As for the cabin where the high-ranking observers were, it was completely filled with the blood flames, and miserable screams rang out incessantly. There wasn't a single struggle of life inside, only the despairing wails of life as it turned to ash. Just as they expected, they indeed didn't encounter the dripping sword domain. However, outside of their logic and imagination, there was a blood flame massacre that came straight to their door. As the highest person in charge of the security team, the B-class expert Su, whose face was ashen, and he didn't say a word. His subordinates were still trying to extinguish the fire. He didn't stop them, but he knew that this was a meaningless action. Blood seizes the soul, flames destroys the body. Under such a vicious blood flame, even if their eyes were forcibly dragged out of the fire, there was no hope of survival. Reality proved his judgment. By the time the security personnel extinguished the flames, 80 to 90% of the people in the fire were dead. Those who were temporarily hanging on to life had large areas of burns. The fire poison had invaded their internal organs, and most of their bodies were cooked. It was better to die. As for the assailants, they had long since flown away into the distance. Their whereabouts were unknown. Su Hu stepped into the fire, and he nearly stepped on a certain eye on the verge of death. This high-ranking observer was nearly burnt to the floor. He unconsciously moaned. Su Hu's hearing was exceptional, so he could hear it clearly. The blood flame order has gone mad. The spider has gone mad. No matter how strong the winds of the seas outside of Xiao City were, it was impossible to blow the moans and the smell of burnt flesh 1,000 kilometers away onto dry land. There was no need to even mention the distant region that was separated by a metropolis. 150 kilometers west of the satellite city of Xiao City, Anzhong, was an undulating hilly region. It was also the complete scope of the wilderness. And at the northeastern edge of the hilly region, there was a cave building that was carved into the inside of the hill. It was known as the Picnic Inn. The architectural style of the Picnic Inn was extremely vagrant. It was said that several decades ago, it was the settlement area of a vagrant tribe. But now, its main function was to provide food, lodging, and supplies. It belonged to the explorers, wilderness vagrants, and other complex groups of people. It was also one of the most legal civilian facilities in the wilderness. Johnny was the seventh owner of the Picnic Inn. The reason why he bought this place was obviously because it could make money, a lot of money. But there was another secondary reason. The Picnic Inn was located behind the District 27 infrasonic array of Xiao City. It was located behind the permanent fortifications, and it could give customers a stronger sense of security. But ever since the appearance of the humanoid infrasonic array in Xiao City, several similar permanent fortifications surrounding Xiao City had dropped in importance. The Picnic Inn also became the target of ridicule for the tourists. Luckily, Johnny didn't count on it to make a living. Instead, he really liked the popularity of this topic, the large amounts of information, and the explosive increase in income. Ever since the night of December 8, Xiao City entered into a state of emergency. The number of people staying in the Picnic Inn and the number of customers increased explosively. 99% of the current guests came for the Miss 2000 and the humanoid infrasonic array. And the Xiao City branch's refusal order had a bit of effect. This group of losers who wanted to take advantage of the situation were like a group of red-eyed mice. They were drooling over the fragrant bait, but they didn't dare to step into the iron cage filled with killing intent. They could only wander around the outskirts of Xiao City. During these 2 days, there were a few people or teams that accepted employment to infiltrate Xiao City for an adventure. There were also some people or teams that were still looking for opportunities. Johnny loved this kind of atmosphere to death. Chapter 537. Johnny was still immersed in the atmosphere of his money-making plan. He did not react for a moment. Which bays? The lobby manager pursed his lips. The one from the Order of Justice. What kind of situation is this? He's still acting like a lord here. Do you really think this is still 2 months ago? Ever since the incident at Frost River Reality, the Order of Justice had lost 2 priests, and Wang and Qingli. Their core combat force, the Oblatum Knights, were almost completely wiped out. Their follow-up reinforcements had yet to arrive. This branch of the Order of Justice had sunk into its weakest period. First Oblatum Jing Shao, who was currently in charge, had never been a powerful character. Faced with this complicated situation, his first order was to withdraw and wait for further orders. He had even disposed of a number of properties. The Wild Inn that Johnny had purchased contained a portion of the Order of Justice's shares. Now that they had all been withdrawn, the lobby manager's mood was as expected. You don't even have a share, so why are you still pretending to be a big-tailed wolf? Johnny originally wanted to chat with the lobby manager about the art of management, but his sharp eyes, honed from years of chaos, discovered that one of his most important sources of information had entered the tavern. Johnny waved his hand. So what if he eats and drinks? A B-rank powerhouse should have this kind of treatment. The lobby manager sneered. He's an Oblatum Knight. Without a priest behind him, how can he be considered a B-rank? That's still 100 times better than a sissy like you who sells butts. Johnny sneered in his heart, but in the end, he just said, all right, let him drink as he pleases for now. If he really gets drunk, he'll spit out 1 or 2 of the Order of Justice's core secrets and change hands. He can even earn back a wine cellar. He dismissed the lobby manager with just a few words, telling this fake man, who was pinching his thumb and middle finger, to scram. Johnny sighed with emotion at the demeanor and knowledge that a professional manager should have. He swept his eyes over the bar on the first floor, and his eyelids twitched. Blood energy. That was a super drink that could only be purchased with honor points and other channels from the inner world. But not only did Baze gulp it down like a whale, he even used it as a topping. At this moment, even Johnny was suspicious. Could it be that the bastard knew that his shares had been withdrawn, so he came here to play the fool? But as the boss, since he had already spoken, he could only brace himself and persevere. At this time, the source of information had already arrived on the 2nd floor. He waved at the person. Hey, black box. F*CKU, it's a metal box. It's just a name, there's no difference. However, if you can take out something better, I can even call you treasure. Pretending to be intimate, they exchanged a few vulgarities and bumped fists. The 2 of them sat on opposite sides of the table and entered into transaction mode. Unlike Johnny, who was an outer member of the society, Iron Box was a member of the Xia City Branch's action team. He was a core force that the society put more effort into nurturing. Therefore, they had a natural advantage in obtaining information. In the past, the Xia City Branch was in a state of leaking on all sides. People like Metal Box had at least opened a window. Because of this, when faced with the gradual tightening of internal discipline, this brother was also full of complaints. We really can't F*King survive now. We're purely blast walls, facing the nuclear explosion head-on, and then dying a worthless death. I must leave this place as soon as possible. That's why I'm in need of money and travel expenses. Johnny chuckled. For the sake of our many years of cooperation, I'm willing to raise more money for you. But for the final project, we have to find a highlight or explosive point. F*CKU, maybe I should put some juicy meatballs in your mouth. Because of your terrible attitude, the prices of goods in Xia City have increased by a notch. Both sides used intimate and ferocious attitudes to carry out a close exchange. 15 minutes later, they finally reached an agreement with great difficulty. Ironbox once again raised his travel expenses, and Johnny obtained relevant information about a certain orphanage as well as the predetermined plans of the Xia City Branch's action team for the next few days. Ironbox didn't care if the price was satisfactory or not. He walked down with a dark face as per usual. Johnny wouldn't tell him that this was the origin of the black box. What? You're talking about black box operations. At their level, they weren't worthy. But soon, Johnny lost the mood to tease Iron Box. In these 15 minutes, Baze ruined at least 2 points worth of good wine in front of the bar on the first floor of the cave. He smoothly knocked away half of Johnny's earnings, and he even continued to do so. This time, not only Johnny's eyelids twitched, even his eyebrows and apple cheeks were twitching. But he really didn't have the guts to clash with this famous muscleman of Sia City. Yes, this was the most fundamental reason. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve Johnny. He left his seat with a taut face and returned to his private room in the next floor of the cave. There was a time limit for the information. He had to make them pay as soon as possible. But not long after he returned to his room, the lobby manager made a phone call before he could even log into the dark web. Actually, there was no need. The cave Johnny resided in was already shaking. He only heard a worthless report. Baze stopped Iron Box and splashed him in the face. Then they started fighting. F***ck this black dog. Johnny finally couldn't help but curse. The problem was that it was meaningless. The worst thing was that the situation in the first floor of the cave quickly went out of control. For the first 30 seconds, the sissy could still cry to him about the loss of assets and casualties. But after a deafening explosion, there was no more sound from the other side. Johnny immediately made a call to the security captain of the Wild Inn. But the news he obtained made his blood boil and his vision darken. The security team he paid millions of dollars in salary every month was practically all dead. As for the 2 leading figures he invited to watch the scene, they didn't even have the time to exchange blows with the Oblatum Knight blessed by the priestess before they were drowned in the indescribably excited crowd of guests and drinkers. Right now, there was already a chaotic battle downstairs. Most of the people came for one purpose, but there were too many monks and not enough gruel. What 2000s or 16 billion? They never said that they could split it evenly. Perhaps many people had the mentality of, the big shots eat the meat, and we drink the soup, but wouldn't it be better if there were fewer people drinking the soup? Hidden competition and suppression were always present, and the corresponding hostility and hatred were also accumulating layer by layer. With a big target, these, gunpowder, could still be controlled. They were temporarily stacked in everyone's hearts, but the premise was that they did not go off by accident. Johnny's scalp was about to explode. If the chaos continued, the accumulated gunpowder would completely explode. Even if this wild and could still be preserved, it would soon welcome its 8th boss. Every time this happened, the previous boss would always end up in a bad situation. He began to make frantic calls to various investors, as well as to the real big shots in the vicinity. The military had shares here, and they would occasionally receive some filial piety. Not to mention anything else, as long as they sent a small team, even if it was just for show. With a muffled bang, the floor clearly shook, and Johnny almost bounced up. He turned his head in shock and saw that the floor, which was compacted with red earth and reinforced with steel bars, had been forcibly pierced through. Half of the body of the metal box, who had just completed the transaction with Johnny, drilled out of the hole. His head was flat and deformed, and it looked like his spine was already broken. One of his eyeballs had exploded out of his eye socket, and the remaining eye still had a dark red bloody hole. The metal box blankly looked forward, meeting Johnny's gaze head-on. The hair on Johnny's thighs stood on end when he faced this scene. Then right after, the door with 3 layers of protection was kicked open. Baze, who was still clutching a bottle of blood energy, grinned as he staggered through the door. Soon, his boot landed, and half of the metal box's body fell down. A muffled sound rang out, and then there was no more sound. Baze, you're crazy. At this moment, Johnny's voice was so sharp that it surpassed that of his lobby manager. He had completely forgotten what was the correct attitude. He could only rely on his instincts to shout, I'm a member of the Xia City branch. He only remembered that a member had been kicked down the stairs when he spoke to this point. His voice came to an abrupt halt. Baze grinned and shook the bottle at Johnny. This wine is pretty good. The sound of the bottle shattering rang out at the same time as the sound of ribs and flesh exploding. The remains of the bottle smashed through Johnny's chest and acted like a nail, nailing him to the wall. Blood and internal organ fragments sprayed out, and soon they dyed a large portion of the floor red. They even flowed down the hole that the metal box had smashed through. Johnny's eyes were wide open, and his mouth was wide open. His remaining breath and life force mixed with his blood surged out from within. Baze's savage smile dissipated from his dilated pupils. Baze slightly leaned his body to the side, and he piously knelt down on one knee. He placed one hand on the ground, and the other on his chest. All glory to my Lord. The scenery before Johnny's eyes blurred, and his dazed consciousness seemed to enter another space. He saw layers upon layers of grids. They were like the interweaving and spreading spider webs of a damp jungle. They stuck to every nook and cranny of the void. Everything trembled on the spider web, including his life force and consciousness that had yet to dissipate. This strange structure was dyed with a dark red color of blood. His soul seemed to be hooked by a strand of spider silk, moving up the layers of the spider web. But how deep and boundless was this web? He couldn't see the end at all. He could only vaguely see the shadow of a blood-red sun in the distant deep space. There were many limbs branching out from its edges, twisting and moving. It was like a malevolent demonic spider. It illuminated everything, controlled everything, and destroyed everything. Johnny's train of thought came to an end here. Fortunately for him, the wild and managed by the seventh boss was able to endure the destructive blow in the end. Even though a portion of the structure had collapsed, the main body still existed. It was just that moving the corpses outside really took quite a bit of effort. News and blood from the sea and inland were transmitted back to Xia City through all sorts of channels. It was already noon by the time it was widely disseminated. Luo Nan had just finished school. He returned to Gear with Shui Lei and ate lunch with Rui Wen and his own security team. The opportunity to freely use the building of Gear was decreasing with each passing moment. He treasured this opportunity exceptionally. He slapped Shui Lei's arm heavily. "You're too good." Zhang Yingying sneered. Luo Nan suddenly felt something strange a few seconds later. He scanned his group of friends and saw that the move Shui Lei had just taught him was being replayed in the group. Below was a string of people pounding the ground while laughing wildly. There were people joining in endlessly. The formation was neat. Bamboo Pole, the cynical man with a high IQ, was the last to speak. "I've just written a small automatic analysis program. You can just download it from the group. It works wonders with the Hexier. We can see how many similar keywords and key sentences Professor Luo will say in one lecture." A bunch of people applauded and praised. The 10-second man truly lives up to his name. Luo Nan had a mental breakdown. "Zhang Yingying, what the hell are you doing?" Zhang Yingying giggled and waved her hand. "There's only one thing I'm trying to say. Communicate well with worker Zhai and do your teaching plan seriously. Don't think too much about it. Everyone has their own specialties. At present, you'll have a better future as a lecturer and swipe credit cards for everyone." The conversation ended. Luo Nan sat on a chair and let out a long breath. There was something he really wanted to say, but in the end, he kept it in his stomach. Did a certain someone misunderstand Her Majesty Empress Wu's intentions? Shui Lei was very confused. What does swiping credit cards mean? Cat Eyes giggled as she answered, "Basically, the boss is currently providing remuneration for around half of the Xia City branch members. You can look at his credit card bill for the specifics." Luo Nan's lips twitched. He was too lazy to respond. At the same time, he knew that what Cat Eyes said was more or less the standard answer. Zhang Yingying's intentions were very simple. It didn't matter if Luo Nan wanted to become a one-man enemy or a 10,000 enemy. With his current strength, he still needed to carry out relevant designs within the framework of the Xia City branch. He proposed ideas and paid remuneration. The Xia City branch was responsible for carrying them out, as long as his credit didn't go bankrupt. This seemed to be in line with Her Majesty Empress Wu's train of thought, but Luo Nan really wanted to say, formatting theory and the Xia City branch's operating model are ultimately different. What Her Majesty Empress Wu wanted to see most likely wasn't how Luo Nan would play around under the latter's constraints. She wanted to see how Luo Nan would come up with a more novel and valuable framework system. Right now, Luo Nan needed to ponder over what he could bring out for others to see, and what he could hide. Of course, this was not an easy task. "Hey, Nanster, your face is too red, right?" Shuai Lei discovered a new situation. "Oh, it's nothing." Luo Nan subconsciously touched his face as he spoke. "It really was a bit hot. You didn't feel anything at all before? Did you have a fever?" Shuai Lei grew serious. He reached out to touch Luo Nan's forehead. "We martial artists either don't get sick, or when we get sick, it's a serious illness. The imbalance of body and defense, the chaotic flow of blood. These are great benefits normally, but when you get sick, you need to get them all back. The gym master often tells me about these things. You haven't been by her side for long, so I'm afraid that you don't know her well enough." Luo Nan was quite confident in his own state. He laughed and shook his head. "It's really nothing." To the side, Cat Eyes was attempting to entice Rui Wen to open his mouth and speak. She saw that the two men were unable to talk clearly, so she sneered and said, "Maybe it's because his business is too big and he worries too much. For a while, he's feeling stifled." Luo Nan glared at her, but Shuai Lei was very much in agreement. "Thinking too much isn't a good thing. You need to pay more attention to your emotions." Shuai Lei was helpless when it came to touching upon the core issue. He knew what sort of situation Luo Nan was facing right now, but he was unable to play a decisive role in a confrontation of this level, even though he could lend a hand. Luo Nan's complexion had already returned to normal while they were talking. But what Cat Eyes had said before was correct. He was indeed under astonishing pressure. And this pressure was brought about by the stall he had set up, some sort of order framework. Luo Nan was not limited to the framework of the Xia City branch, but he did not purely use the framework of formatting theory as his main force. To be precise, what he was using right now should be the altar framework. Yes, the altar framework that came with the fluttering curtain of rain silently covered all of Xia City and even the surrounding areas. It was the Wraith Sign's own altar framework. It was a system of rules where the winner takes all and the loser perishes. Compared to the emptiness and chaos of the formatting theory framework, this bizarre framework that had accomplished many meritorious deeds was more realistic. The Wraith Sign shuttled back and forth day and night for 2 days. It weaved an invisible spider web that penetrated the hearts of the people within the enormous Xia City. Thanks to Her Majesty Empress Wu, she informed Luo Nan of the identities of the capital spokespersons, brokers, and officials. She also allowed Luo Nan to grasp a bit of thread. Using this as a basis, Luo Nan extrapolated layer by layer, exposing a large amount of hidden details and veins. Luo Nan did not let a single one of the people connected, hung, or strung together. Luo Nan let the Wraith Sign move freely. From ability users to normal people, from soldiers to officials, from capital spokespersons to various interest groups, as long as it could permeate, the Wraith Sign would visit them one by one. It rapidly spread. The results were plentiful at this moment. Chapter 539. Finally, they finished their lunch with much difficulty. After the meal, Qin Ikuan and Gao De went to arrange the security team's shifts. Cat Eyes began to fulfill her babysitting duties. She tried to get Rui-1, who was used to being cold and aloof, to integrate into the large group as soon as possible. Shuelei originally had something he wanted to discuss with Luo Nan, but worker Zhai called at this time to discuss matters regarding tonight's gathering. Everything else was fine, but Di Weiwu had the temperament of a child. Some things slipped out of his mouth. Even if everyone had a tacit understanding, it would still be a bit awkward. Worker Zhai and Luo Nan set up a few topics in advance. When the time came, they would do their best to lead in that direction. After talking for a while, they naturally entered the domain of the class and discussion on the night of the 14th. In any case, Worker Zhai was a guest teacher of a large society of Acumen College. He had plenty of experience in training and teaching. He saw that Luo Nan was a bit scared, so he gave Luo Nan an idea. "I'll write down my thoughts first. Later on, we can discuss seriously based on this draft. Let's see if there are any areas that are more meaningful or controversial. We can use this to extend the main points and outline of your class. Actually, this is exactly the same as tonight. I'll be the assistant. You'll be the main speaker. I'll guide. You expound. We'll work together to fool." Luo Nan expressed his thanks again and again. He made a preliminary appointment with Worker Zhai. They would meet on Wednesday, which was the night of the 12th. They would pull an all-nighter and finish all the teaching materials. They would set aside a day for Her Majesty Empress Wu to review it. Then they would go to the execution grounds. No, to the lectern. The call ended, and Luo Nan got up and stretched his back. He habitually performed 2 stretching motions. After Gym Master Xiu's training, Luo Nan was able to perform similar motions in a professional manner. As his limbs moved, his entire body's joints, muscles, bones, skin, and so on contracted and relaxed. His blood energy rose and fell, so much so that he could hear the gurgling sound of blood flowing. This had nothing to do with guiding. In a second or two, Luo Nan's cheeks, neck, and even his shoulders and back, which were covered by his clothes, were covered with a layer of bright red light. The surface temperature of his body rose a bit, and he even felt a bit swollen. Fortunately, he discovered it early this time. When he closed his eyes, the divine will and body will were coupled together. His internal organs, tendons, bones, meridians, and acupoints interacted with each other. Yin and yang rose and fell. This sudden surge of vital energy circulated and spread to his limbs and bones to strengthen his foundation. Sigh. Shuelei opened his mouth, but then cut it off. Luo Nan on the left, Shuelei on the right. Pose properly. Shuelei grinned and looked at the photo again. His eyelids twitched. We agreed that it's a demonstration. No photos. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and go. Luo Nan and Shuelei were truly in a difficult situation. They glanced at each other, but they were helpless. They could only follow Cat Eyes' instructions and stand on the 2 sides of the electronic photo frame. They followed the poses of the 2 people in the photo frame and slightly staggered their angles. Then they continued to communicate with their eyes. You first. You first. Everyone together. Okay. That kind of pose only looked funny on the photo. If they really had to do it, and if they were to do it properly, it would be truly shameful. It would have been fine if Luo Nan and Shuelei did not exchange glances. But when their gazes met, they laughed until they staggered left and right a second later. There was no hope for any other pose. As their coach, Cat Eyes was extremely dissatisfied. She clapped hard. You 2 idiots. What happened to being role models? Luo Nan was waiting for these words. You're the coach. You're the role model. Why don't you come up and try? From Luo Nan's perspective, this was a sharp counterattack. But reality proved that he was still too young. Young. Cat Eye's eyebrows shot up, no problem. As an outstanding dancer, Cat Eyes could unlock all sorts of poses at any time. She felt no pressure at all from a small comedy scene. Watch closely. Cat Eyes calmly took off her jacket, revealing a skin-tight protective suit. She stepped forward and pushed Shui Lei aside, standing face to face with Luo Nan. Then she raised her left leg and hooked it backward. She raised her right hand up, assuming a reverse joint position. Her left arm extended backward, and her right knee bent inward. It was as if her entire body had been frozen in a high-speed rotation. This posture was awkward no matter how one looked at it. It was funny no matter how one looked at it. But Cat Eyes was an outstanding dancer. She used these elements to perfectly portray the flexible and graceful posture of a woman. Especially since she was still wearing the skin-tight protective suit. Her undulating curves and soft waist made the two men in the room not know where to place their eyes. Luo Nan thought about how it was hard to avoid making a fool of himself, so he seized the last bit of time he had to tease Cat Eyes. "Leicester, where are you looking?" Shui Lei was innocently implicated, but the moment of crisis revealed his true colors. He directly responded, "Sister Cat Eye's posture isn't precise enough." Luo Nan looked at Cat Eyes. Cat Eye's posture was restored to its original state, and she raised her eyebrows. Shui Lei was right. She had indeed made some slight adjustments to her posture when she was imitating. After all, the sense of harmony and beauty of any plastic art was reflected in the details. Since Luo Nan had delivered himself to her doorstep, then he shouldn't blame her for being impolite. She giggled and retreated a few steps back. She prepared to find a good angle to take a picture of this rare scene. She had just chosen a position and gestured a bit. She could not help but laugh in spite of herself. "Hey, Rui Wen. You really can't wait to enter the Luo family's door." She saw Rui Wen, who was beside her, actually cast off her usual indifference. She copied the pose in the photo, twisting her body and exerting force. She stretched her arms and legs. Her usual wooden expression contrasted beautifully with the two serious faces in the photo. The more she acted like this, the more adorable she became. Cat Eyes laughed out loud. She formed a circle with her index finger and thumb, and the synchronized virtual lens centered around Rui Wen. The three figures were encircled. She just needed to exert a bit of force with her fingertips, and the gesture response would be effective. She would record this rare scene. But at this moment, a low and deep sound wave permeated the room. The sound was like the rustling of rain falling on the eaves. It was dense like a tide crashing against the shore. For an instant, it was as if Cat Eyes was standing in the middle of a surging river. The sound of water filled her surroundings, and deep within, there was the sound of shrieking. Cat Eyes clearly wanted to exert force with her fingers, but they suddenly froze in this moment. It was hard to move an inch. Ouch! Luo Nan suddenly turned around, but he forgot his current position. He committed the lowest of mistakes. He sat solidly on the ground, ignoring the pain in his butt. He raised his head to look in astonishment. It was as if Cat Eyes had just woken up from a dream. She subconsciously exerted force with her fingers. She had a hard time in the past. She definitely needs a normal living environment. Family is one thing, but she also needs to interact with school and society. Which school do you think she should go to? What grade do you think she should start at? Be with me. Acumen College. It'll be easier to take care of her like that. His aunt smiled. She didn't comment. She asked, "Do you want to develop a hobby or something like that?" Luo Nan had a flash of inspiration when he heard her mention this. He thought of Gym Master Xiu's instructions and made a comprehensive plan. Ruiwen already has a foundation. I'll take her to see Gym Master Xiu in a few days. He'll definitely be willing to give her pointers. Mo Yi sneered from the side. You're the one who represents everything. Why don't you see if the little girl is willing? I say, why don't you play music with me or something? Hey, don't you think Ruiwen's voice is quite special? Luo Nan went, He was actually unable to refute. Speaking of which, he vaguely remembered that he had thought this the first time he saw Ruiwen in the underground fighting arena. He was just about to discuss this when a stimulus suddenly shot out from his brain. It transmitted a completely new piece of information into his chaotic mental space. Chapter 542. Ruiwen, we said we'd meet tomorrow. Mo Yi smiled as she wrapped her arms around Ruiwen's slender shoulders and whispered in her ear to confirm. Ruiwen shot a glance at Luo Nan before giving a slight nod. His aunt frowned. This is a serious matter. Don't be so careless. No matter how you look at it, I'm still considered an outstanding graduate of Acumen College and a celebrity alumnus. Ruiwen is also still in compulsory education, so it's very simple for her to join a class. Mo Yi made an okay gesture. She had already taken care of everything just now, handling Ruiwen's enrollment procedures and other matters. Madame Luo Shuqing reprimanded her verbally. In fact, among the 3 children, she trusted her eldest daughter to handle things, excluding the goddamn rock star. That was the end of tonight's gathering. It could be said that both the host and the guests enjoyed themselves. There was no need to mention Ruiwen's side. Uncle and worker Zhai were both technical personnel, and their way of thinking was very similar. Today, after a deep conversation, they unexpectedly hit it off very well, and the 2 of them drank a few more cups. It was hard to say when it came to techniques, but when it came to alcohol tolerance, it could be said that his uncle was completely defeated by worker Zhai, who had officially become an awakened. When the cold wind blew on him after he came out, he felt a little numb. In this way, even if the car had an automatic driving system, it would not be suitable for him to sit in the driver's seat. They came one after another. His uncle's SUV, his aunt's housewife's car, and Mo Yi's sports car. They used a total of 3 cars. Let me do it. At the age of 16, one could already apply for a driving license for a smart car. Mo Peng had the authority in this area, but he usually didn't have the chance to do so. At this moment, he was exceptionally enthusiastic. Unfortunately, a remote driving function wiped out Mo Peng's little ambition. In the end, he only obtained the qualifications to be a puppet in the driving room. Luo Nan didn't care. In fact, he didn't even pay attention to which car he boarded in the end. At this time, his mind was occupied by the message he had just received. Almost all the mental energy he could spare was sent to it, but there was no result at all. His eyes were closed, but his consciousness was already connected to the external neuron and entered the void brain app. He wandered about in that extremely unfriendly interactive interface. It was from this interface that he received a notification. The analysis of the newly added element in this interface, which is the spiritual seed of Jin Tong, has reached 100%. Analysis completed. Alright, the above was just Luo Nan's imagination. God only knew what the hell the hieroglyphics on the pop-up window were. All Luo Nan knew was that when his telepathic thoughts connected to the projected icon of the soul light seed, he thought that a corner of the mysterious veil of the virtual brain app had finally been unveiled to him. But what he was faced with was yet another terrible text pop-up window. There was also an unreadable grayish-white color below. The words on the pop-up window were still indecipherable. Luo Nan was only left with 2 options of yes and no. One of the options was marked as the default choice. Other than the amount of text, this pop-up window was practically identical to the one Luo Nan encountered. Could it be that this app is here to mess with me? Right now, Luo Nan had already encountered 3 different pop-up windows in the virtual brain interface. The 3 groups of words were like 3 cold, high walls, blocking him from the core meaning, making it impossible for him to approach. Under the pop-up window, the unreadable grayish-white hue seemed to have gone in countless circles before returning to its original point. Does the app have a delete option? Luo Nan's heart was filled with resentment. He was disinclined to guess the true meaning of the pop-up window. He followed the default option and clicked on it. Then, a 4th pop-up window jumped out. WTF. Luo Nan smashed his seat heavily. He even cursed out loud in a moment of desperation. Humph. You dare to curse at me? Moya turned her head from the driver's seat. Her sharp and slender eyebrows shot up. Her expression was extremely dangerous. Luo Nan was sitting in Moya's sports car. Right now there were only him and Moya in the car. As the lead singer of a rock band, Moya's style of driving was like a violent storm. She took the lead right now, leaving the other 2 cars behind without a trace. Big sis, you're having fun. It'll be hard to be a security guard. Luo Nan sighed. He wasn't in the mood to play around with her. He just exhaled, slow down a bit. Sorry. I was distracted just now. Then you got fixed up by someone. Moya teased, but she really did slow down the car. Luo Nan was unable to explain this. Luckily, Moya didn't get to the bottom of things. She just changed the topic. Rue-wan, I've fought for you to stay right under my eyes. As for the school, you deal with it yourself. Ha. But you're talking about, Moya lightly curled her lips, there are tens of thousands of outstanding alumni of Acumen School. How could they look up to a lowly singer like me? 2 days ago, I was able to ask a friend to help me out, but that friend recently ran off to the wilderness to do scientific research. If I were to ask someone else, my relationship wouldn't be that strong. I'd lose face if things went wrong. Luo Nan had practically never seen Moya display such a weak appearance. He couldn't react for a time. He finally replied with great difficulty, then what are you doing? Don't you have a bunch of scoundrel friends at Acumen School? Also, you can even order around the deputy director of the SCA. Those school directors of Acumen School don't count for much. Am I right, Mr. Luo? Okay. Actually, I just received a call from a certain manager. There's a last-minute appointment tomorrow. A group operation. We have to leave in the morning. It's useless to ask for leave. If I go back on my word now, I won't have the face to see the Empress Dowager. Luo Nan heard the word appointment and suddenly thought of a few eyes that had already been burnt into charcoal. Even though the person who came up with the idea had died, the various bosses had backup copies of their dirty tricks. It wasn't impossible for them to appear. But what could he say to Moya? He could only say a simple sentence, pay attention to safety. Yeah. You need to have a plan for your journey. He subconsciously sighed when he spoke to this point. However, the irritable mood in his heart dispersed quite a bit from this turbid breath. The current situation in Xia City was created by him. Naturally, he had to solve it. At this stage, his plan was still in its embryonic form. There was still a lot of work that needed to be done. The situation was becoming more and more complicated, more and more exhausting. Everyone else could get angry, but he couldn't. Why did it have to be like this? Wasn't it because of the flaws in his personal strength? If he really had Her Majesty Empress Wu. No, even if he had the strength of Jin Tong, it would be enough to suppress the overall situation. He researched the virtual brain interface and the external neuron for the sake of an opportunity to increase his strength. Looking at it this way, no matter how disgusting the virtual brain interface's changes were, as long as it was constantly changing, this opportunity would always exist. Why did he need to torment himself? Luo Nan's state of mind calmed down quite a bit as these thoughts circled around in his head. You didn't speak again, and the car returned to silence. Luo Nan naturally shifted his mind back to the virtual brain interface. The pop-up text window was still there, icy cold. There were two options, and one of them was selected by default. Luo Nan suppressed the mood in his mind. He followed convention and simply chose the default option. The interface switched once more. It was also in this instant that the hateful ash-gray color suddenly brightened. A new interface appeared above the icon of the soul light seed. The surface flickered with a dense white light. The faint light was like strands of fresh air seeping in from a closed cellar. It made his heart, which had been stifled for a long time, feel quite a bit more relaxed. This light is pretty weird. Another pop-up window popped up just as Luo Nan had this thought. 5 consecutive shots. Luo Nan's heart was filled with profanity, but it had already surged to the back of his throat. Chapter 543. That's right, he could flip the page. The first thing Luo Nan saw was the assembly diagram interface. In the game, it was pretty much everything. But in the virtual brain app, it was just a portion of the assembly diagram. There were many, many more to come. Luo Nan flipped through it roughly, relying on his mechanical knowledge and game experience. He guessed that it included at least 4 or 5 basic modules, such as energy, life support, armor, perception, and so on. If you were to count the accessories, mounts, and so on, then there were thousands of components involved. Moreover, each component could have a separate interface. Different structural angles could be adjusted, and it could also present a 3-dimensional view, a cross-sectional view, and other flat drawing effects. If his consciousness deliberately tapped, it could even display even more detailed explanatory text. Of course, Luo Nan couldn't understand it. No game would be so stingy with details to this extent. This proved that this wasn't a game. It was a blueprint. An extremely complete design blueprint. Based on Luo Nan's shallow knowledge, he could rely on the level of detail and the information of these blueprints. If he had a processing plant, or even a 3D printer, and enough raw materials, then perhaps he would be able to quickly produce, assemble, and use it. Simply amazing. Luo Nan couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. Why did the external neuron produce such a result when it analyzed Jean Tong's spiritual seed? Could it be that this exoskeleton was tailored for Jean Tong? But he needed to come back to life first. And wasn't this body a bit small? He didn't understand the size labels, but this kind of interface that was directly presented on the consciousness level possessed a bit of intuition. Luo Nan's consciousness was immersed within, and he was able to have an intuitive concept of size. It was as if he himself was immersed within, wearing a set of armor that was unpredictable. He could sense whether it was suitable or not. His feeling was, Jean Tong's physique isn't too suitable. It fits quite well on me, but it can't be for me, for me. Luo Nan's heart thumped loudly. He suddenly thought of Jack at this moment. As for why his thoughts had such a large leap, it was really due to the external neuron pulling him in. He still remembered that fellow, Jack, had used a dynamo core to transform from an altered human into a burner. Later on, even when he was in a half-crippled state, he could still control the deep blue walker exoskeleton without any hindrance. What did this mean? Did it mean that Jack was awesome? Wrong. This meant that the external neuron, which essentially belonged to the dynamo core, should be compatible with the deep blue walker system. In the primitive interface of the virtual brain, there was an option of exoskeleton. Luo Nan responded, "The main thing is that the effects are average, and the energy consumption is quite large." Octopus was very annoyed. Boss Luo. Boss Luo. You are an expert in nerve drugs. Can you not say such childish words? Just based on the amount of drug you injected last time, a normal person would have died 100 times over. It would take at least a week for the negative reaction to be eliminated. If you increase the dosage now, do you think that neurons are crops that can grow crazily just by applying a bit of fertilizer? But if I don't replenish it in time, it will be useless when the inhibition effect comes out. If it's useless, then it's useless. What's more important than my life? Then I'll sleep for 6 or 7 days. Are you sure I won't sleep all the way to the Yellow Springs by then? Or maybe I'll wait to collect the corpses of my family, relatives, and friends. I want to ask. In the end, Octopus didn't give Luo Nan a definite reply. He just said that he had to report it to his superiors and that he could only reply tomorrow morning. Luo Nan estimated that the effects of the drug would be able to last until noon tomorrow, so he didn't force Octopus. I'll also mention it to Sister Yuan. If she can't find Her Majesty Empress Wu or even President Ouyang. But bro Octopus, you'll need to concoct the relevant drug right now. Octopus replied hatefully, are you sure you can return it? Then he logged off and went to find someone. Luo Nan laughed and let out a breath. He went to study the assembly interface. But at this time, he suddenly discovered that there was a corresponding white light of a spare part not too far away from him. It was following him from beginning to end, practically in sync. He was almost home. Oh. Luo Nan's mental senses swept over. The carrier of the white light was actually the off-road vehicle that God drove. To be precise, it was a certain metal suitcase in the trunk of the car. Isn't that God's portable deep blue walker equipment? From the effects of the special filter, a considerable portion of its structure was suffused with white light. Hiss. Could this be directly used? They were both exoskeletons. How could the difference be so great? Could it be due to the archetype format? Luo Nan's mind shook, but he became absent-minded in the blink of an eye. How could the overlap rate be so high? What if? Luo Nan had already reached home while worrying about his gains and losses. He didn't say a single word as he returned to his room. He pondered for a moment, but in the end, he still gave He Yuan a call. He first mentioned the matter of adding the dosage of the drug, but he didn't say too much about it. He didn't wait for He Yuan's confirmation before he impatiently said, Sister Yuan, I need a deep blue walker. I'm talking about the equipment. That's right. A complete exoskeleton armor. He Yuan didn't ask Luo Nan what he wanted. Chapter 544. It had been snowing and raining in Xia City for nearly a week now. The ground and all sorts of buildings seemed to be permeated by the moisture. Many people complained that their entire bodies were rusty after a night's sleep. Their joints creaked and groaned. It was useless even if they turned the heating system to the max. There were even people petitioning on the government's website. They hoped that Xia City would use interference methods to disperse the rain and clouds so that the citizens could enjoy the warmth of the winter sun for a few days. On the Observing Faces show, the beautiful host used the tone of a script to chat with Phantomai Che-E. They talked about the weather and made it one of the topics of their conversation. Don't blame her for being a vase. Lord Ghost, I loved this. The eyes of this old and unruly extraordinary were always so lively. They wandered back and forth on the beautiful host's body. Oh my God. Miss Shan must be working hard to make this show in this damned weather. The beautiful host subconsciously drew her legs together. Her face revealed the professional smile that she was most adept at. It's all right. The sea is calm and tranquil. But it really feels different when I get ashore. Actually, this was a blatant lie. Ever since the luxurious cruise ship rented by the show arrived at the outer seas of Xia City, the beautiful host had been on the ship the entire time. She hadn't left even half a step. The other person who did this was Ghostai Che-e by her side. It was these two who spoke frankly and with assurance about the freezing rain in Xia City. The beautiful host began to enter the main topic. I've heard quite a few people say that the freezing rain in Xia City may be the result of some interference. After all, in an environment of -20 degrees, it is very difficult for a heavy snow to suddenly turn into continuous rain. What do you think about this? What opinion can I have? Currently, the Xia City branch has issued a denial order according to the emergency regulations. Ouyang and the martial monarch have endorsed this order. As a member of the society, I don't have permission. I don't have interview rights like you media, so I can only obediently stay in the outer seas. The rain in the outer seas has stopped for the past 2 days. The pitiful adaptability of the beautiful host was completely inadequate to deal with Ghostai's teasing. She was a bit stupefied for a moment. Fortunately, Ghostai beamed as he picked up the flexible screen next to him. However, there are quite a few comments on this matter on the internet. I like this one more. Moisture seems to be diffusing between the heavens and the earth, but in fact, it has already deviated from the laws of nature. It seems illusory yet real, unable to circulate. The beautiful host hurriedly followed. You mean, this freezing rain is man-made? How could I say that? I just read one line and felt that its syntax was quite neat. After that, Ghostai teased the beautiful host while saying some vague words. The topic of conversation shifted from the freezing rain weather to the high number of deaths and injuries in Xia City. These were clearly sensitive topics, but he was able to use glib words to bypass the most important points. He never revealed his true position. To put it simply, I have a lot of money, and I will never do anything that offends people. No wonder he chose Dan Yi, a pretty face. If it were someone as eloquent as Li Baizhou, Ghostai might not have come. Octopus pointed at the program while choosing the medicine. But most of the time, he was more interested in the appearance and figure of the beautiful host. According to him, in this kind of program where the content depends entirely on the guests, a vase is really more suitable. It must be said that Octopus was a very talkative person, but he was especially talkative today. He was even a bit talkative. It was most likely because he had injected the medicine again, giving him quite a bit of pressure. Luo Nan leaned back on the recliner and continued to adjust his breathing. A rack was set up on one side of the recliner. A complete set of monitoring equipment was placed there, and the corresponding sensors were connected one after another. Octopus was probably afraid that Luo Nan would be bored, so he opened the video of last night's face reading program. But Luo Nan didn't respond. Most of it was due to his lack of energy. It was 10 in the morning, and the school classes had yet to end. But medicine waits for no man. It was hard for Luo Nan to persevere. He needed to replenish his medicine immediately. For this reason, Octopus escorted the relevant equipment and medicine from the east of the city to the west of the city. The reward was 0.5 honor points, which was 500,000 according to the market price. It was not an exaggeration to call this service a robbery. However, the one who set the price was the finance committee. If there were any doubts, they could appeal to Her Majesty Empress Wu. Besides, compared to the price of a set of deep blue walker equipment, this amount of money was nothing. Though Octopus was watching the program, most of his energy was placed on the monitoring data. He concocted the medicine while shaking his head. Don't blame me for being long-winded. This sort of continuous stimulation may not be fatal with your cultivation, but no one can tell the repercussions. Especially since you're on the mental side. Your brain is very precious. Since you're already here, what's the point of saying all this nonsense? Cat Eyes lay on the sofa, watching the program. The dancer's figure was actually a cut above that of the vase host. Unfortunately, Octopus didn't have the guts to watch. Cat Eyes' cultivation and temper had both risen recently, and she was moody. He was afraid of losing face by provoking her. Luckily, Cat Eyes was in a good mood right now. Hey, I'm passing by. Don't miss it. Rosh Yoga First Stage, Jungle Shooting Bird Stance. It's very precious first-hand information. How about you give it to me? The price is negotiable. As Cat Eyes spoke, she minded her own business and switched the content of the projection in front of her. The display showed Luo Nan standing on one foot, twisting his neck and breaking his arms in a strange pose. The drizzling rain had drenched his hair, and even beads of ice had formed on it. It was both funny and embarrassing. This was the result of Cat Eyes' personal photography this morning. Back then, Luo Nan had taken a break from his busy schedule. After he arrived at school, he went to the northern shore jungle. He followed Gym Master Xiu's principle of combining the inside and the outside. He posed in nature in an attempt to probe the mysteries behind his grandfather and father's comical poses. Shuelei wasn't on guard against Cat Eyes, and he leaked the relevant words. Then, it spread throughout his circle of friends. Octopus was still picking and choosing. You've already posted these in the group. Is there anything more explosive? Cat Eyes gave him a sidelong glance. How about you drug him and let him run around naked outside for a bit? We'll record it when we get back. We'll split the profits 50-50. The two of them glanced at Luo Nan as they spoke. However, they didn't even roll their eyes at him, let alone get an echo. Right now, Luo Nan's hand was gently twirling a soft syringe. His eyes were fixed on the syringe. It was as if he wanted to unearth a forbidden secret technique to kill all the rebels within and outside of Xia City. He also seemed to be dispirited and helpless. His mind was faintly discernible, and his soul was wandering beyond the heavens. The two glanced at each other. At the same time, in a private chat channel on the Psychic Wave Network, information was displayed and refreshed layer by layer. See? I told you it was necessary. Is there a need to throw his life away? How could it be that serious? After all, we're doing this for his own good. Do you think we should make a move? I'm just a small fry. Yesterday I was a firefighter. Today I'm a bodyguard. Tomorrow I might even have to warm the bed. What qualifications do I have to speak? What's wrong with your mind? Speaking of which, do you really think you can make him sleep with you warming the bed? If you can do it, then don't look for me. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and get the person in charge. Sometimes this boss is simple and foolish, but sometimes he's as shrewd as a monkey. If you hesitate for too long and he sees through your flaws, then you're done for. Two simple words responded to Cat Eyes' long-winded speech. Inject. On the plane of reality, Cat Eyes gave Octopus a look. Her meaning was, oh, the vice president in charge has spoken. Octopus shrugged. He didn't hesitate any longer. He injected the prepared drug into Luo Nan. In the end, Luo Nan wasn't an omniscient god. He was completely unaware of the undercurrents operating on the Psychic Wave Network. His mind hadn't been idle since 100 hours ago, especially from yesterday afternoon until now. The trend of his activity was probably mysterious posture. Virtual exoskeleton assembly interface. Mysterious posture. Virtual exoskeleton assembly interface. This cycle went on without end. Occasionally, he would insert some adjustments to the situation in Xia City and the altar's framework. His mind was a bit restless and anxious due to the suppression effect of his cerebral cortex for the past 2 hours. He waited for the ice-cold drug to be injected into his blood vessels and take effect. Finally, he could relax his mind a bit. Some thoughts and emotions were like floating clouds that lingered in his mind. Luo Nan finally discovered that he was filled with envy and jealousy towards the archetype format and its accompanying Deep Blue Walkers. He wasn't jealous of the combat strength of the Deep Blue Walkers. He was jealous of the weapon platform behind it. It was a research system composed of the world's top scientific research power, the most top-notch talents, and the most extravagant resources. It was precisely because of this system that the archetype format was able to continuously develop, improve, and apply. How fortunate! And right now, the analysis process of the external neuron was presenting him with another system. Even though only a small part of the iceberg had been exposed, Luonan was able to get a glimpse of its grand, precise, and complete overall scale from the appallingly detailed assembly interface and the thousands upon thousands of various blueprints. Most importantly, it was impossible for it to correspond to the archetype format. It was certainly the genuine formatting theory. At least this was the case from what Luonan could see. Inconceivable. Luonan's mind hadn't stopped for even a moment since last night. Excitement, stimulation, and bewilderment formed a never-ending whirlpool of thoughts. How did this system come to be? Where did it come from? Was it the results of his grandfather's research back in the day? Or was there a deeper source? That fellow. His father. The reason why he sent the external neuron back was because it hid such an enormous secret? How did he discover it? How did he use it back in the day? Could the natural mode of words be overcome? Or was there a way around it? Could he obtain answers from the analysis and assembly process when faced with all sorts of puzzlement? Luonan didn't know, but he had already done it. Right now, he was twirling the soft needle tube. He was considering the problem of the muscle structure within the exoskeleton system. Chapter 545. After an entire night of research and combining with the mainstream structure of today's exoskeleton weapon platform, Luonan divided the virtual brain exoskeleton, which was still in the blueprint stage, into 7 modules. They were power, inner armor, outer armor, close combat, long range, support, and mounting. Below each module were several hundred to over 1,000 assembled spare parts. Every spare part had a detailed blueprint and a large amount of text explanation. Perhaps it even included the requirements for crafting. Luonan was unable to understand the most valuable part of the content due to the existence of the natural chasm of words. But through intuition, he could more or less experience the size and shape of the parts and understand the difference in size. And the vast majority of these parts could be found in Xia City and the surrounding areas covered by the soul cloak. Luonan spent most of last night searching for the corresponding material. He felt like he was playing a game of chain link. Every time he succeeded, a sense of accomplishment would spontaneously arise. There was no doubt that this gave him the greatest encouragement. It was as if this virtual brain exoskeleton could be completely assembled in the next second and he could wear it on his body. Even though it was illusory, there was always hope. But this excitement suddenly crashed into the muscle structure, which was the inner armor module, and it suddenly shattered into pieces. The inner armor module of the virtual brain exoskeleton was more like a close-fitting protective suit from Luonan's perspective. It felt like a layer of artificial muscles when worn on the body. It could expand and contract according to a certain range, hence the name. The main structure of this protective suit was not made of metal. Instead, it was woven from some macromolecular material and filled with some kind of liquid. The reason why he was able to recognize it was because of the existence of molecular formula-like symbols within the large section of text that he could not understand. The symbols directly displayed the short-range and long-range structural fragments of the macromolecular material. But there was still the problem of the natural chasm of words. Even if there was a molecular formula and a structural diagram, the manufacturing process was far beyond the heavens. It was hard to grasp. Unless there really was an almighty being that could directly control microscopic particles and forcefully produce it according to the structural diagram. But that was all. What truly troubled Luonan was that he could not find the real counterpart of this protective suit. At the very least, it did not exist within the area covered by the soul cloak. This was quite troublesome. With Luo Nan's shallow knowledge, he was unable to calculate the effect of the exoskeleton's lack of inner armor on the overall performance of the exoskeleton. Mulling over it right now was nothing more than adding to his worries. His rationality required him to suppress such thoughts. He had also tried using the coordination art to reduce the priority in this aspect. However, under the dual stimulation of drugs and emotions, the highly excited cerebral cortex was simply too hard to control. A lot of plausible molecular formulas and hieroglyphs that he did not quite understand shuttled back and forth in his brain. His mental power, which was already insufficient in the first place, occupied a considerable amount of space. I still need to hurry up and get to the practical level, Luo Nan muttered to himself. He completely ignored the existence of octopus and cat eyes nearby. The two who were ignored also quickly refreshed their messages in the dedicated channel. Is it okay to talk to yourself like this? He should be fine. Should. There are indeed some hallucinogens in it. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult to hide it from him. The dosage was also discussed by a bunch of people in the group. It's quite accurate. Is he trying to avoid responsibility? In any case, I don't see the slightest inclination to sleep. He'll definitely be able to sense it. Do you believe that he'll pull the plug immediately and take all of us at the same time? Are you afraid of the dripping sword HMG? The two entered into crosstalk mode. They actually hoped that the mastermind of this matter, the vice president, would hurry up and take responsibility. The problem was that there was no reply after the vice president issued the command. While they were looking at each other in dismay, Gauda pulled a suitcase that was half the height of a person and walked out of the elevator. Luo Nan's gaze immediately moved away from the soft syringe and cast over there. Mr. Luo, an urgent message from the military. Luo Nan took a deep breath and sat up straight. A deep blue walker. Yes, an engineering prototype. Sister Yuan's efficiency is truly super high. Luo Nan praised in anger. Looking at her appearance, if it weren't for the syringe and sensor inserted into his body, he would have already gotten up to open the suitcase and research it. To the side, Cat Eyes stared at Octopus. Octopus glanced at Cat Eyes. Their thoughts were all subtle, and this was directly reflected in the dedicated channel. Vice President this isn't right, right? You're efficient at getting favorable impressions. We'll do things that offend people. It's not too good to bring it over right now. Isn't this giving him a heart shot? Yuan finally spoke to explain. The finance committee and the military's efficiency has exceeded expectations. Can you control the scene a bit? No matter what sort of undercurrents were surging in private, the metal suitcase containing the deep blue walker had already arrived before Luo Nan. Luo Nan didn't even need to open it. As the cooperation between the military and the society grew closer day by day, a considerable amount of information was made available to the society. The dynamo core was no longer a secret. According to the military's information, the dynamo core was the center of energy control and conversion. It could effectively increase the might of the format of fire and strengthen the control power of the deep blue walkers. The vast majority of burners had received the relevant implantation. The problem was that the implanted dynamo core of a burner couldn't be like the external neuron. It could freely change and flow between the virtual and the real. Furthermore, it hid a precise and complete system like the virtual brain app. There was a clear generation difference between the two. Then, this generation difference corresponded to concrete equipment. What kind of scene would it be? Luo Nan subconsciously ground his teeth to eliminate the numb feeling in his mouth. It was as if electricity had passed through him. Under the stimulation of drugs, the neurons in various places would be activated to show the ups and downs of his mood. It wasn't just his mood. Luo Nan's train of thought was a bit erratic. It was a bit hard to grasp. Now, he had a special feeling about the ghastly white light in filter vision. This light, which only he could see, radiated from the exoskeleton armor in front of him. It seemed to have a penetrating sense of fragility. It made him suddenly have a strange thought. The first equipment interface that the virtual brain app presented was of a relatively high standard. A pop-up window appeared and switched to the current interface with a warning. Perhaps the material was a grade lower, causing some sort of weakening. The deep blue walkers were already the world's most cutting-edge individual weapon system. And it was of a low grade. Wouldn't it be easier to understand if an advanced civilization had descended on Earth? Luo Nan unconsciously grinned and laughed. He was inexplicably happy. All right, I'll put aside the completely clueless advanced civilization protective suit for now. Let's look at something a bit more practical. With God's help, he removed the exoskeleton right arm module from the metal box. He held it in his hand and pondered it carefully. According to the blueprints on the assembly interface, the modification process here seemed to be the simplest of all. The original arm module had 3 functions: palm, wrist, and forearm. But he only needed 1 function. I don't need this and that. How do I pull it off? Luo Nan wasn't just talking. He was about to make his move. It didn't feel bad to the touch. God subconsciously glanced at the 2 beside him. The higher-ups of the security team knew about Luo Nan's drug injection plan. They had made the corresponding arrangements. But no one had told him that Luo Nan would be like this after the injection. Was he drunk? Cat Eyes wouldn't take the blame. She stared at Octopus. Octopus had an innocent expression. Luckily, God could answer this question. It was a prototype that hadn't been debugged. All sorts of functions needed to be adjusted. It was just right for DIY. Dismantling and dismantling was very normal. But dismantling wasn't the end of it. Structural adjustments needed to be made, and the wiring design needed to be changed as well. Luo Nan watched as God's emotions floated, but his mouth was still able to speak clearly and logically. God, a non-professional, was a bit stupefied when he listed 2 or 3 requests. He subconsciously asked, "Should we transfer an engineer over?" The group of people looked at each other in dismay when a call was made to the Heir. Luo Nan saw it and clapped his hands in laughter. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.